morning, salam alaikum, namaskar, aiwam, and greetings, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and people of the world. Welcome to this show again, and it's the second morning of the Women in Management Global Economic Forum at Sri Lanka. Having a lovely day, we had great breakfast and meeting some absolutely empowered women on the sidelines of the event. I have somebody very inspiring in the studio today, somebody I know for a couple of years now and have been following the work that she's done. She is the first female CEO of a very large publicly quoted conglomerate in Sri Lanka. A Sri Lankan, by whatever you may call it, an accountant as she says. She calls herself an accountant. And this morning we had the privilege of listening to her keynote address sitting in the massive ballroom. Please join me in welcoming Kasturi Chellaraja Wilson. Kasturi, welcome.
Pleasure being here, Venkat, and good morning, Aibon and Vanakkam to everyone out there. It's really good to sit on the couch with you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Kasturi, my question to you, I have several questions going through my mind. Your journey so far, can you share with the viewers your journey of where you got to where you are today?
Yeah, I guess, so the journey and I guess why the question keeps coming is, how did you become the first female CEO of a publicly quoted conglomerate? And let me define why the uniqueness there is. A conglomerate is multi-disciplinary industries, right? And I guess the perception was it was most unlikely that a woman can be a leader of multiple industries and handle that complexity. So it became kind of a unique thing here and was all over media. But I've been 3 years into the role. But so my background and my journey is, weirdly, I never wanted to be a career woman. I never wanted to be a corporate. I grew up in a very humble family, in a middle class. But uniqueness is I was the second of 2 daughters. So we didn't have a boy in the family.
Okay.
So I had the license of, I never heard that behave like a girl. I was like, I love to be the tomboy, right? And then I would be the one climbing trees and jumping off bikes and stuff. And another uniqueness is my family. My mum was the breadwinner, sole breadwinner for most parts of my life, if I recall. And my dad was a stay-at-home dad, and my mum did 3 jobs. So I grew up knowing what a woman-led household would be. She did 3 jobs only to make sure that my sister and I had a better education.
Awesome.
And both parents were liberal enough to not push me to push both of us actually to say like, okay, you have to be this or you have to be that. It was never a conversation of what I have to be versus be the best, do what you love, but do not fail in your studies. So I took it literally. I didn't fail in my education, but I was a sportswoman. So in school, I represented school, captained school for all 3, basketball, netball. Athletics, I captained Sri Lanka for basketball. I played 2 sports in that country, basketball and netball. So where I'm going with this is, so I was more out there. What I picked as my personality and leadership is what I learned off the classroom. Okay. As a sports person of a team, you realize you're best as the teammates. Your teammates have to be excellent. We have to excel, right? It's not like me shooting. I was a shooter, right? It was not like me shooting all my goals. It's just that the team has to win. And if I don't support my partner or my teammates to be better every single day, your team is not going to improve. So you learn those fundamentals. You learn the fundamentals that you don't all have good days. Some days you have bad days. But your teammates have to prop you up. When I'm down, somebody props me up. When they're down, I prop them up. So these lessons I learned off the field. And the last lesson is, I think, you're from different walks of life. Whether you're race, and I'm a Tamil from the north, I was a minority. And I must tell you, during our school days, it was like, in 83, we had the riots, right? And the minority, the houses were burnt. And my class of 40 turned to a 2 class of 2.
Goodness.
Because half of them either went to, some of them went off to Jaffna, some went to Canada, and some went to Australia. So I was left with this thing of what do I do in school? Firstly, I lacked ambition, but I was good at math. So I said I want to be an engineer.
Okay.
that was just the only logical thing, because I didn't want to be left out saying I don't have an ambition. I said, okay, I'll be an engineer. Class of 2, the school didn't have a Tamil maths class stream for A-level. But I adjusted because I knew I was valuable for my sports. They gave me an English teacher who taught me maths in English. But I had to study in English and eventually do the exam in Tamil. That's a different another story.
My goodness.
But my first job was, I was headhunted at the age of 18 when I did my A-levels within a week to join an audit firm. Now, a math student headhunted by Arthur Andersen or Somerset at that time to join an audit firm. And you know, you ask why, that's only because of my sports. No other skill. I was headhunted to play netball for the firm. They used it as they were the A division champs. But my personality is whatever I do, I want to be excellent in it. So deep down, I went in full form into it, learned auditing while I was working. So I became a good auditor. I was a senior auditor and playing for Sri Lanka. Then the next problem was, what do I do from here? I'm not qualified. I got into uni at that time. Universities were closed because there was strikes and there was a lot of ragging. And I think my uni days was only all of one day. Somebody called me aside to rag me, and for all my sports, I chickened out. I thought, no way, I'm going back home. And I went back home. But on the way home, something really hit me. I thought the only commitment my mother wanted was for me to have a qualification in life, be it university or anything. And the reason she said that was, and that may be the reason I never wasn't that ambitious, was keep a qualification. In the day you need it, you can fall back on it.
Beautiful.
That was it. So went back, marched, and I told my boss I'm going to leave because I need to get a job which I can earn more, because audit firms clearly don't pay you. And there they turned around and said, Kasturi, don't leave. Again, I was valuable, this time not for only my sports, but for the work I did. Actually, the company paid for my education. So that's how I was there. By 22, I was qualified as an accountant. I was an audit manager. I was a director consulting for them. And clearly, again, I was not ambitious. I got married. I thought that was what drove me. I wanted to become a mom. So by 25, I was a mom of 2 boys. And luckily, I had a wise boss who said, don't give up, work part-time. So this is 30, my elder son is 30, so it's 30 odd years back. That they said work from home, work and come flexi. Yeah, so I worked from home practically for about 4 years. And I tell this story because I'm grateful. I wouldn't be here if not for that. So I always kept in touch with work, and I knew I was good at my job. But at 29, I became a single mom of 2 boys, and I was physically responsible for them. I was financially responsible for them. And at that time, all my ambitions of I don't want to be a career woman has to be left aside. And I thought, no, I need my kids to have a future I didn't have. Kids to have the choice of doing what they want, and which meant I need to go for full-time work. So that's how I moved out and went to a corporate sector. I joined HEMAS 21 years ago. Again on finance, purely because that's what I was good at, right? And did I love finance and account? I hated it. I thought it's one of the boring stuff. But it paid my bills. Somebody praised me because I was doing a job. And I thrived on that because it gave my salary, right, to look after my kids. But in 3 years, I knew they pulled me out and gave me to set up shared services and run group IT.
Oh, lovely.
So I guess I was in an organization which looked beyond your stereotype roles.
Absolutely.
They looked at capability and they didn't see gender. They were gender blind.
Really nice.
And I can remember the CIO role. I owned it as a business person. I didn't understand technology. I still don't. I know technology helps us transform business. Then we were the family. It was a predominantly family-owned company, but it's public quoted. In 2003, we went public. And they started moving out of executive roles. So in about 2009, I took over as a CEO or a managing director of logistics, transportation, and maritime. A, I didn't understand the business. B, I was going into a male-dominant sector. But my boss was somebody who said, no, you have the capability. You go in there, own it the way you want to. And it's literally helped me own it the way I had to, because you're talking about a traditional, why I'm saying this, a traditional business where this is in 2010, 11, 12, where maritime deals are made on the golf course or in the bar in the night. And I'm like, I can't do either.
You don't either.
Golf course I could, but I couldn't visualize myself, who was used to a fast-paced game, hitting a ball and walking like some yards and then waiting to hit another ball. I was like, that's not for me. But weirdly, how people really accept you if you bring something to the table. It was like, I wouldn't make excuses. I would tell my business partners, I can catch up with you till about 7, my kids are at home. So I learned over time to own it the way I knew how to own it. I learned over time to understand my leadership style and kind of how I impact people. So I can be too straight, I can be too firm, I can be a lot of two things, but I also knew that I added value and people would learn from me, and I would be known as a kind boss and a tough boss at the same time. So moved there, then ran the pharmaceutical cluster. We're the largest in Sri Lanka on healthcare. And 3 years ago, I was took over from a British gentleman who was our group CEO.
Okay.
As a group CEO for the group. So yeah, that's my story.
Wow.
Accidental accountant who ended up becoming a career woman, yeah.
Somebody in Sri Lanka making a movie on you? Accidental accountant. Very inspiring. For me, a couple of stories and lessons for the viewers. So one is Kasturi was put into roles that she knew nothing about, heading up maritime and shipping and logistics. I can tell you this from experience, it's not an easy task. Wanting to play sports and becoming an accountant and getting into consulting. So a lot of lessons here. But more importantly, Kasturi, when you are put into roles like these, and whether by choice or whether not by choice, how do you pick them up? And the fact that you are a CEO today and you're hugely successful proves that you've done it well. How do you transform yourself for the role, or how do you pick up the threads and move on?
I think you should be open to knowing that there's a lot of learning. There's a lot of unlearning and there's a lot of learning. And again, excellence doesn't come from just rocking up and going and sitting on a seat, right? It comes to the sports field of, if you want to be a good shooter, you have to do like 1,000 shots a day. You have to turn up every day at the court. You're not going to become excellent overnight. It means you have to do a lot of research. So that's first part of it, is make sure hard work is part of in your DNA. And it may be monotonous, but you still have to do it, is one thing. Second thing is letting go of what you learned to learn something more. And I'll tell you where it came from. When I took over transportation, I was a functional specialist, right? And my hallmark, everybody asked in the group, what is Kasturi good at? Oh, she's obsession for performance, attention to detail, and it was all about understanding everything, every detail, percentage, driving change from the function. Now you move to an MD of a business. I had to move up a plane and leave these details to others. And remember, I'm giving up my strength to learn a new skill which I don't know whether I was good at, right? That mindset of exposing yourself for failure was tough. Letting go of what you're good at was really tough. Knowing that there was a cushion, if I failed, that I could go back to my old job, was a comforting part of it. And that was how I approached that. But it's from a place of, I don't know, it's okay, I can learn from people. And I would always say, what I bring to the table is understanding what you say and giving more strategic view and getting the best out of people. Simple as that. I learned from you all. So when I went to pharma, remember, those are about molecules and therapeutic classes, and we were representing the MNCs from Pfizer, AstraZeneca, Servier, and the big Indian giants of Sun Pharma to Ranbaxy, Zydus, all of them, right? How do you learn it? So I would learn it from the way I knew how to learn it. As a mother, as a woman, when somebody prescribes anything for your kids, or you read about it. You understand why and what's the underlying thing, how does it work? Then if you're a Sri Lankan, and you're passionate about people, you understand about what are the health indicators, how are the trends. So you bring a business conversation. So I actually learned to understand industries the way I can own and relate to, and own the seed that way. And that kind of was the differentiation and how I added value. All the businesses, I must say, did grow under my care. This thing, I kind of doubled. The logistics actually was like 3 times the revenue in 5 years. Pharma was a phenomenal success. We grew market share from 22 to 33% in the 4 years I ran it, and changed the way people believed in themselves as leaders. So technically I made myself redundant because the businesses ran without me. So I guess that's how I prepared it, from the place of I don't know, I had to learn, but people around me, get people who are better than me around me. So they do the work and I try to understand and help them to be better. That's it.
So companies, you're listening. Clearly, Kasturi is a great example of putting a woman at the helm of affairs and watch your profits grow. And I think the forum has been talking about it ever since we arrived yesterday. My next question to you, Kasturi, is on women empowerment, since that is the topic. Sometimes I've been here since for the last 2 days, and I've been talking to women. I don't know whether you women need empowerment. I think we're going to probably have men to have an empowerment for us. But on a serious note, are we doing enough for women empowerment? Or should we be doing two things, two parts of the question? Should we be doing something differently or more as a society? And more importantly, should we as organizations be taking cognizance of the fact that women need to be recognized and given their rightful place at the table?
There's a lot of parts to that question. Firstly, from the numbers globally, I think women in labor force participation is still around 30 odd percent, right?
Wow. Poor.
So other than the Western world, where it's, I think the European, Finland, Norway, there's a higher participation. Yeah. This part of the region, it's 30 odd. Sri Lanka is dropped to about 34. So we're not doing enough. And it's an economic imperative that we do this, do this right. Because if you take Sri Lanka as an example, 50% of our citizens are women. I'm just defaulting, looking at that same statistic and saying 50% of the talent should be women.
Correct.
But it's only 34% of that 50% who are in active labor force. Where do the problems lie? It's universal, it's a cultural issue that women are the custodians of family, kids, parents, grandparents, in-laws, the works, right? How do you do that as well as succeed? While there is lots of empowerment in the corporate, and some amazing women have broken the barrier in being great entrepreneurs, are we doing enough? We are not. And that is not them coming into the system. There are two aspects: joining the workforce, and second aspect is how do you adjust and create an environment which allows them to succeed within their own circumstances. Why I say is each one's circumstances are different. We can't, I come from a place that I can't solve how the nucleus of the family thinks. For the moment I can't. Because there the husband might think, he's not going to compromise, he's going to work. You work, but you still look after the house. So we can't solve that. So that part we can't. We can solve making sure we adapt, allow them to be the best version, giving them flexibility. And that's what happened to me. I could come in at any time, solving the kids' issues. I could go off to drop them off at swimming. And the thing was, the outcomes are measured versus checking whether I clocked in or clocked out. And today at Hema's, we say families matter. So I have young kids, guys, leaders, male leaders who tell me, Kasturi, I'm coming late because it's my turn to drop or take care of the child. And it's normal, it's accepted. So we've moved from women have to be treated in, there was unequal policies for women, and that's what I grew up with, purely because it was unequal at home. Right? I was a single mom, and how does an organization support me to bring the best to work? So address those needs. So that's one part of it I think we need to do more of. It's not one cookie cutter, because there's a lot of biasness there and social pressures. the social pressures, I think, is over generations we have to change. Culturally, a woman leader is not seen as feminine. You're like a strong leader. She's this, she's bossy. At home, you cannot compromise and say you can give up taking care of your kids. The other flip side is, how is society ready to handle and accept a man who is going to be a stay-at-home dad? No.
It's still a taboo.
It's a taboo, right?
Yeah.
And that man is he's made to feel less of a man.
Yeah.
A man's success is the car, the title he holds, the job he holds, the wealth he has. And that you can't change. So as long as that's hard-coded, who supports a man? It's a woman. So we have to slowly start changing those social biases and making sure that we kind of bring some equity into that part of it. In the workplace, biasness, I think one part we need to address, and what we address purely because they have to handle me as a personality. As a woman leader, I won't be like holding the seat and talking or thinking like a man would. My altruism might be higher, my empathy might be higher.
Correct.
The strategic thinking, how I connect the dots and how another person connects the dots would be different.
Absolutely.
And even if you put 5 men in the table, they would think differently. They might be having more of a left brain maybe than us. But so what happens is, when you put a differently thinking person in a room full of overly dominated by men, immediately the tag is, yeah, it's a woman and she's like, they're not willing to see beyond. If I was, it would have been, if it was a man thinking like this, it would have been, it's a unique man, it's a different guy. It's coming with some smart stuff is coming from this guy. Versus you get blinded, and we have to remove that bias that, okay, it's a woman, she has to fit into the boardroom conversation. Versus the boardroom should think, look, we have to adjust to understand that is a diverse way of communicating, thought process, and things of right things to do. Even if you're talking about productivity, automatically people might say normally it's like, okay, cut salaries, reduce it. Versus you kind of think there's different ways. Eventually outcome would be this. But that comes on the way what drives your passion and value. And from a female point of view, passion, emotion, empathy is a big part of it. And we want outcomes, but how we approach it is different.
So to continue that question,
I can see you have a lot to ask on.
And if considering you've been at the helm for many years now, and you're doing a terrific job of it, so the boardroom, which is I'm assuming more men than women, has the board arrived at a consensus that Kasturi, you act like a man? Or have they figured out and said, no, there's a lot of sense coming from that side of the room?
Actually, there's the latter. So, I must be very honest, it's amazing diverse board of men who have independent directors, even from India and Australia. Lovely. They took time to adjust to my style of delivery and the style how I react to some of their feedback. But eventually the outcome was, you know what, we understand to trust that Kasturi thinks differently, the outcome happens.
Okay, good.
Let's take the effort of understanding where she comes from. Good. And I take the effort to understand how they understand stuff, so that I can bridge the gap in how I communicate. So we've come to this point, versus it's definitely not Kasturi doesn't think like a man or talk like a man. Good. And they're allowing me to be Kasturi and the true Kasturi. And the anecdote I had was the 21 years I worked for Hema's, it's still standing. They haven't changed me, and they have not sacked me, and they have just learned to adjust to me. So yeah.
And have you ever felt, maybe not the most appropriate question, have you ever felt intimidated the first few times you walked into the boardroom? Or?
Oh yeah, I've felt intimidated in many occasions. Not only the boardroom. I remember one, I joined the pharmaceutical industry once, Until then, within the organization, I didn't feel I was not intimidated.
Right.
As a person, I don't get. And I didn't feel any discrimination or biasness, right? So I went to a committee meeting where I was just a committee member, and at the helm was a very senior gentleman. And they were talking about some industry issue, and I was new, but I had my thoughts, right? When I tried to give my 2 cents, it was like talking me down, like, wait, we'll come to your customer.
Yeah.
Wait. And I watched it. It went around about 8 guys around the table, and it never came to me. And each time I tried to, it was like, wait. And that gentleman had a very gruff, loud voice. So I also have a side of me I can snap. And so the next topic is, they forgot about Kasturi's opinion. Next topic was, can the Chambers dance happen? Who's going to organize? And immediately it was like, I was the only female there. And like, Kasturi, can you organize the dance? And I was like,
yeah.
I think the way all of you all are dancing around the table, one of you all do that, because that's not my hallmark. I definitely not a person who organizes anything.
Wow.
If you want strategic input, I'm there, but not for these things.
Right.
And there was pin drop silence.
Did you say that?
Yeah.
Excellent.
And that was the last time somebody spoke down at me, and then I became the chamber chair as well. And I learned that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess the nervousness is, I think, so, and it's normal. We tend to, so I took over the seat as a CEO from a British male who was from an investment banking background, right? So his conversations from shareholders and the business and the board would be from that angle. Okay. Now I am purebred business, ran business from operations, process, finance, you name it, right? Now, I kind of felt like, how do I own it? Should I start owning it like him? And I was doing this hybrid of trying to be this or this, and it was like the first few meetings, I was saying, no, that's not me. I let go. I've now 3 odd years back later, as a CEO, I've learned to own it as me, and I've learned to understand investment banking. I took time to go and understand how they think, how do they make decisions, what are the drivers, so that I appreciate that side of it, which I have to equip myself. So what I think is, I guess the pressure anybody has is when you go into somebody else's seat, you try to fit into that seat the way others are used to.
Right.
And you're adjusting. Versus, take the hard stance of how do I own it? How do I embrace and make sure the others understand the change? Versus, and the style you bring. Eventually you make changes if you think it's necessary in terms of strategy and structure. But firstly, it's the style and understanding where you come from. I guess that is a pressure anybody would face each time you go into a new role.
Which leads me to my next question, your leadership style.
Yeah. So I've been told, I'm talking from outside, is what I've been told in my 360 is that I get the best out of people around.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
So there are always perceptions. So if anybody asks reference from outside, and this is like they ask peers maybe, okay, there's a vacancy here, can I join? So this happened to me when I was at transportation sector. There was a finance director's role and I was MD. Should I apply? And the response one of our internal people who didn't work for me gave was, she's a tough boss. If you need to work, if you have to work hard, she's tough, please don't join. You know, it's like that. She's one of the toughest bosses. Okay. But that's from the external. But if you ask internally, they say, yes, I'm tough because I want outcomes. But I push them to be better. And I'm one of the best teachers they would find. I would push them and ask them. I would never tell them to come to me without answers. I'll say, okay, so what would you do? And then I'll guide them through a thought process. But I always tell them, try it the way you think. If it doesn't work, let's correct it quickly. So I've learned that I'm a coach and a mentor, and I get the best out of people around. I've always also know that I'm really tough on outcomes. People who are mediocre, lazy and dishonest don't survive more than they exit out of the company very fast. And the last thing is they know I make tough decisions, but I'm really, they think I'm a kind boss. Which means that I understand people, but I don't, their kindness is not at the cost of the company. Kindness is in the cost of maybe personally or just getting an ecosystem to support. Yeah.
If you were to do, now that your boys are grown up, if you were to do a 360 with your boys, what would they say?
So I did a 360 with them about 7 years ago.
Oh, you really did?
We did. I had to do in my 360 my coach. So I've always had this gentleman called Shabir Merchant from Value Lead in India. From 2009, he would come in. You see me today, but I'll tell you, I was a rough edge person because for me, I came from a place of getting things done.
Yeah, operational.
I would trample. I put my foot into the wrong thing all the time. Too straight, too strong were the kind of nuances I heard. But my kids they said a few things. I had to check for my parents' kids. My kids' thing was, if you say something to Amma once, it's done.
Okay.
That is like, if they say, Amma, I need something, and it's just a random comment of a book or whatever, it's done. So it's only one thing she's committed, she'll do it. They would say I was tough, but they also had told me that I was one of the kindest people they've seen, and they would aspire to be like that. And recently, one of my younger son had sent me a message in the night and said, you know how much I admire and I'm inspired by you. If I can be half the person you are.
How sweet.
It's more from a human side of it.
Very nice,
yeah, I guess they see that side, but generally what people say who work for me is what you see is what you get. If I'm upset, they'll know it. I can't. I struggle to
hide it.
And I've learned a trick of pretending to look down and be engrossed in a book if I'm really annoyed, because I don't want that to be shown. But yeah.
You won several awards, Kasturi. I can go on next 5 minutes. Did any specific award, if you were to pick one, with no disrespect to any of the others, would you pick any award that was really special for you?
I think a couple of things, moments is, one award is, I think the first award I got is Sulo's Award in 2012 as corporate leader.
Okay.
And for me, that kind of gave me a platform for others to see me. Until then, I was doing my job, right? I guess I appreciate that, just to plug into the ecosystem. And it helped me understand that I could be recognized. B, it gave me a platform I could help others on, right? But you know what? The award which I remember is not the award, but the moment is, I think I was recognized either the Parliamentary 12 or you can say I don't even remember the award. No, it was the LMD. They had, so LMD brings, now they make it 100, but that time it was 50, the top leaders, 50 top leaders of Sri Lanka. And the first time I came onto the list. So there it's not male or women or whatever, it's just leadership, right? And my son sent me this note and a card, and they were overseas, and somehow this gets delivered in the night. And they said how keep going, how I've inspired them, how proud they are of me, and keep going forward, because I was sitting on the couch watching TV alone when I read it, and they are right behind me. And why I remember that moment is, I cried, is because when I got married at 22, all I wanted was somebody to walk alongside me, right? Yeah. And when I went the journey of the career, it was, I didn't have somebody walking alongside with me. But the moment I realized my kids said they're right behind me,
awesome.
Was, I guess that was that, I remember that moment so much, that so you could really know that somebody's there you could lean on.
Oh,
so
wonderful.
Yeah. So
you've done a great job as a mother, Kasturi, as a parent, if I may. Well done. Pat yourself on the back. No, these things are so important, as I always say this to people, as we leaders, we sometimes tend to take ourselves too seriously. So, and you forget these good moments, right? When your kids or your parents appreciate you. So, well done. You spoke about branding this morning, and I was listening, I was in the audience. You made some very pertinent points. How should youngsters or the younger generation coming out of college, and in Sri Lanka probably needs it, treat themselves as a brand? Because I've always felt that an individual is a brand. How should they treat themselves as a brand?
I think firstly they need to understand what makes them uniquely different. And it may be creativity, it may be the kindness, it may be the being the glue amongst the team. It can be something, but own it. It may be the problem solver. Be consistent with that. But the bigger part is the values. So I think constantly if you display values which impact people around.
Very nice.
And that's built with your uniqueness, over time it becomes a brand, because you're impacting people consistently, right? It's not about only yourself.
Right.
And I talk to university students and they say, is it the way you dress? Is it the way you carry yourself? Yeah, those are part of the initial perception, because somehow society is cruel. They say, okay, she looks like this, walks like this, whatever. And they say, I've been told a sari is my brand, but they don't understand why I started wearing sari. It's because I couldn't afford to change suits and trousers, and I couldn't afford it. Sari is economically, it's cheap. In India, you buy it and you can repeat it and people don't mind. And I purely entered in two things. One is it's economical. Second, it made me look older than my age when I was an audit manager. But it became a brand without my knowledge. But so how you impact others, how you connect with them, and leaving a lasting impression, whether it's your differentiation, whether it's your value system, and both over time consistently, I think is a brand. So they need to understand it's not about them, it's about your uniqueness and how you impact people around. Otherwise and I spoke about a product, and you move out of the product and say, what do you want to support the consumer to do? Yeah.
Beautiful. So as we come to the end of our show, Kasturi, I want to do a Venki trademark rapid fire with you, if that's okay. Okay, so let's.
So it's one answer, one word.
One word. Okay. 2 words is fine. I'll give you some options. Okay, let's start. So leadership.
Getting others to be better.
Okay. Diversity.
Inclusivity.
Beautiful. I'm so glad you said this. Women empowerment.
Allowing them to be the best version of themselves. No apologies.
A brand.
Speaks to your heart.
Sri Lanka is
my home.
Oh, beautiful. And Kasturi is?
Kasturi is Kasturi. Nobody else. A rough diamond, I guess. It doesn't. I wouldn't be anybody else, put it that way.
Go on the finger or on the neck?
Go on the?
On the finger, you said you're a diamond, so go for them.
I think I'm a neck person. Try the finger.
Awesome. This is so beautiful. Kasturi, it's been an absolute delight speaking to you. Every time I meet you, there's always a takeaway for me. I find you very inspiring, and I'm saying this from the heart. Very proud of what you have done. I learn from you every time we meet, and your personality. I can't write it down on a piece of paper, but I like your personality. I love your personality. For the viewers, you heard her speak. You listened to her journey. Several takeaways. So one is clearly from a brand perspective for the youngsters out there, the Generation Z. Try to be yourself. Instill a value system like Kasturi said in the morning. Look at yourself in the mirror and define who you are. You don't have to be the boy next door. You don't have to be the girl next door. You can be yourself. Stick to your values. You do not have to walk the often trodden path. Try to see if there is a road that suits you or that is something you want to walk by. You don't have to play the role of your class monitor. You can be your own self. When you join the corporate world, you get a new role, learn it, put your head down, get deep into it, be obsessed about I like what she said, be obsessed about the outcome, be obsessed about details, and absolutely true. While her auditing background may have helped her, clearly be obsessed about details, because attention is, you need to pay attention to detail. Like they said, somebody has said, God is in the details. And also act with empathy. And for all the men out there, for the boys out there, empathy comes very easily to women. I know that. I have grown up in a women-empowered home, 4 sisters. Empathy comes easily to women. For men, we need to practice it. So as leaders, I think we need to wear that on our sleeve. Kasturi, before we close this show, I really want you to share your message or something you want to tell the audience.
Yeah, thanks. While you're talking saying these last statements, I was thinking of 2 things actually, and I didn't realize you were going to give me an opportunity to tell 2 things. One is that whether it's women or men, kindness is a tool you can use. It never is out of fashion.
True.
And it's underused kind of commodity or a component in life. So I'm a firm believer that the world needs more of that. Secondly, for the women, there is soft power. Let's not forget that power means strong, hard, bold.
Right.
And I can be strong, hard, bold, but my default is just soft power.
Beautiful. So thank you on behalf of the audience, the women of the world, the globe, women in management. Sulochana, thank you. Kasturi, once again, pleasure talking to you.
Pleasure is mine.
What a lovely time I had. Thank you.